Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Come on, he said to Ron. He pushed open the portrait of the fat lady and climbed through the hole. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through the portrait hole, hissing at them like an angry goose. Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourselves? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall for knowing all about switching spells. Go away. All right, but I warned you. You just remember that I said when you're on the train home tomorrow. You're so... But what they were, they didn't find out Hermione had turned to the portrait of the fat lady to get back inside and found herself facing an empty painting. The fat lady had gone on a nighttime visit and Hermione was locked out of Gryffindor Tower. Now, what am I going to do? She asked shrilly. That's your problem, said Ron. We're good to go. We're going to be late. Harry hadn't been reached the end of the corridor when Hermione caught up with them. I'm coming with you, she said. You are not. Do you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Filch to catch me? If he finds all three of us, I'll tell him the truth, that I was trying to stop you and you can back me up. You got some nerve, said Ron loudly. Shut up! Shut up, both of you, said Harry sharply. I heard something. It was a sort of snuffling. Mrs. Norris? Breathed Ron, squinting through the dark. It wasn't Mrs. Norris. It was Neville. He was curled up on the floor, fast asleep, but jerked suddenly awake as they crept nearer. Thank goodness you found me. I've been out here for hours. I couldn't remember the new password to get into bed. Keep your voice down, Neville. The password is Pig Snout, but it won't help you now. The fat lady's gone off somewhere. How's your arm? Said Harry. Fine, said Neville, showing them. Madame Pomfrey mended it in about a minute. Good. Well, look, Neville, we've got to be somewhere. We'll see you later. Don't leave me, said Neville, scrambling to his feet. I don't want to stay here alone. The Bloody Baron's been passed twice already. Ron looked at his watch, then he glared furiously at Hermione and Neville. If either of you get us caught, I'll never rest until I've learned what curse of the bogus Twirl told us about and used it on you. Hermione opened her mouth, perhaps to tell Ron exactly how to use the curse of the Bogies, but Harry hissed her to be quiet and beckoned them all forward. They flitted along corridors stripped with bars of moonlight from the high windows. At every turn, Harry expected to run into Filch and Mrs. Norris, but they were lucky. They sped up a staircase to the third floor and tiptoed towards the trophy room. Malfoy and Crabbe weren't there yet. The crystal trophy was glimmered where the moonlight caught them. Cups, shields, plates, and statues winked silver and gold in the darkness. This is the painting. Statues. And here we see shadows of Harry, Hermione, Neville, and Ron. They edged along the walls, keeping their eyes on the doors and either end of the room. Harry took out his wand in case Malfoy leaped in and started at once. The minutes crept by. He's late. Maybe he's checking out, Ron whispered. Then a noise in the next room made them jump. Harry had only just raised the wand when they heard someone speak, and it wasn't Malfoy. Sniff around, my sweet. They might be lurking in a corner. It was Filch speaking to Mrs. Norris. Horror-struck, Harry waved madly at the other three to follow him as quickly as possible. They scurried silently towards the door, away from Filch's voice. Neville's ropes had barely whispered around the corner when they heard Filch enter the trophy room. They're in here somewhere, they heard him mutter. Probably hiding. This way! Harry mouthed to the other way, and petrified they began to creep down a long gallery full of suits of armor. They could hear Filch getting nearer. Neville suddenly let out a frightened squeak and broke into a run. He tripped, grabbed Ron around and the waist, and the pair of them toppled right into a suite of armor. The clenching and crashing were enough to wake the whole castle. "Run!" Harry yelled, and the four of them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Filch was following. They swung around the doorpost and galloped down the corridor when another Harry in the lead without any idea where they were going. Filch ripped through the tapestry and found themselves in a hidden passageway. Hurried along it, he came out near the champs' classroom, which they knew was miles from the trophy room. "I think we lost him," Harry panted, leaning against the cold wall and wiping his forehead. Neville was bet double, wheezing and sputtering. "I told you!" Hermione gasped, clutching at the snitch in her chest. "I told you!" "We've got to get back to Gryffindor Tower," said Ron quickly as possible. "Malfoy tricked you," Hermione said to Harry. "You realize that, don't you?" "He was never going to meet you. Filch knew someone was going to be in the trophy room. Malfoy must have tipped him off." Harry thought she was probably right, but he wasn't going to tell her that. "Let's go." It wasn't going to be that simple. They hadn't gone more than a dozen places when a doorknob rattled and something came shooting out of the classroom in front of them. It was Peeves. He caught sight of them and gave a squeal of delight. "Shut up, Peeves, please. You'll get us thrown up." Peeves cackled. "Wandering around at midnight, tickle firsties. Toot, toot, toot. Naughty, naughty, you'll get caughty." "Not if you don't give us away, Peeves, please." "Should tell Filch I should," said Peeves in a saintly voice, but his eyes glittered wickedly. "It's for your own good, you know." "Get out of the way," snapped Ron, taking a swipe at Peeves. This way was a big mistake. "Students out of bed!" Peeves bellowed. "Students out of bed down the charms corridor!" Ducking under Peeves, they ran for their lives, right into the end of the corridor, when they slammed into a door, and it was locked. "This is it!" Ron moaned as they pushed helplessly at the door. "We're done for! This is the end!" They could hear footsteps, Filch running as fast as he could towards Peeves' shouts. "Oh, move over!" Hermione snarled. She grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Alchemora!" The lock clicked and the door swung open. They piled through it, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against it, listening. "Which way did they go, Peeves?" Filch was saying. "Quick, tell me! Say, please. Don't mess me about, Peeves. Now, where did they go?" "Shan't say nothing if you don't say please," said Peeves in his annoying singing voice. "All right, please." "Nothing! Told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please." And they heard the sound of Peeves whoosing away and Filch cursing in rage. "He thinks this door is locked," Harry whispered. "I think we'll be okay. Get off, Neville," for Neville had been standing on the sleeve of Harry's dressing gown for the last minute. "What?" Harry turned around and saw quite clearly what, for a moment, he was sure he'd walked into a nightmare. This was too much, on top of everything that had happened so far. They weren't in a room as he supposed. They were in a corridor, the forbidden corridor on the 3rd floor, and now they knew why it was forbidden. They were looking straight into the eyes of the monstrous dog, a dog which filled the whole space between ceiling and floor. It had 3 heads, 3 pairs of rolling mad eyes, 3 noses, twitching and shivering in their direction, 3 drooling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery rows from yellowish fangs. It was standing quite still, all 6 eyes staring at them, and Harry knew that the only reason they weren't already dead was that their sudden appearance had taken it by surprise, but it was quickly letting go that there was no mistaking what those thunderous growls meant. Harry grabbed for the doorknob. Between Filch and death, he'd take Filch. They fell backwards. Harry slammed the door shut and they ran. They almost flew back down on the corridor. Filch must have hurried off to look for them somewhere else because they didn't see him anywhere, but they hardly cared. All they wanted to do was put as much space as possible between them and that monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the portrait of the fat lady on the 7th floor. "Where on earth have you all been?" she asked, looking at the dressing gowns hanging off the shoulders and their flushed, sweaty faces. "Never mind that. Pig snout, pig snout." panted Harry as the portrait swung forward. They scrambled into the common room and collapsed, trembling into armchairs. It was a while before any of them said anything. Neville, indeed, looked as if he'd never speak again. It was a while before any of them said anything. "What do they think they're doing, keeping a thing like that locked up in a school?" said Ron finally. "If any dogs need exercise, that one does." Hermione had got both her breath and her bad temper back again. "Don't you use your eyes, any of you, do you?" she snapped. "Didn't you see what I was standing on?" "The floor," Harry suggested. "I wasn't looking at his feet. I was too busy with his hats." "No, not the floor. It was standing on a trapdoor. It's obviously guarding something." She stood up, glaring at them. "I hope you're pleased with yourselves. We could all have been killed, or worse, expelled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed." Ron stared after her, his mouth open. "No, we don't mind," he said. "You'd think we dragged her along, wouldn't you?" But Hermione had given Harry something else to think about as he climbed back into bed. The dog was guarding something. What had Hagrid said? Gringotts was the safest place in the world for something you wanted to hide, except perhaps Hogwarts. It looked as though Harry had found out there what grubby little package from Vault 713 was.